You mind? Here, I'll take a look too.
Alright, yeah, I might just be at right now at the point of it's waiting, literally like it's just like that buffer period between it live and it actually goes live.
Oh, looks like we're live.
Yep.
There we go. Okay, Andrew.
Excellent.
You
Very
keep
good.
an eye on the audio levels real quick at the beginning of the show. I'd appreciate that. Andrew, welcome to the show. Let's try this again.
Thanks.
We'll get it eventually.
And my name is Andrew. Welcome to my live stream where we'll talk about game development and how to create a game using Unity. I'll just share my screen, and you can see I've got new setup here, and we're gonna just move this stuff around and just go up here, create a new game object. Are you following, Max?
Well, no one can see your screen.
That's okay. You just follow my voice. In here in the inspector, you can. Yeah,
we can talk about that because you've been working on a new game.
Well, maybe it's. I think it's hung up for now. I was gonna mention too at some point, but I'm probably gonna try a couple different things for now. I had a somewhat eye-opening conversation with a guy in the industry, which like once in a while you talk to someone who like really knows things, and it's like I really am like one of those young, like foolish, idealistic people that just has no idea. But yeah, it was an interesting conversation. I just don't know if a city builder is what I want to do. So we'll see.
So I'm just checking the audio real quick. I think you might have a weird thing on your voice. There's no way I'm going to be able to change it at this point, though, and it's not.
Yeah, there's something. I think there's something slightly wrong with my mic actually, because I was checking in Audacity and I noticed a lot more noise than usual. Let me just double check right now. Yeah, it looks a little noisy with the waveform.
Yeah, I thought it was coming through on my end, but I'm looking through.
Yeah, it's not that bad on Audacity. It's not as bad as it sounds on the stream. But oh well. I mean, I just listened to it. I mean, like it sounds to me bearable, but I don't know how.
I know what it is. I've put like an audio booster on my thing because my audio. Right, I told you my headset's fucked up now.
Yeah,
so
but
my audio.
Max, if you change it, like, I hope like maybe just leave it for now.
No, it was coming too loud through my headset into the mic. I've lowered Discord, and so now you should be fine.
Okay.
I'm looking at the waveforms. It's looking fine on my end. I have been working on the book.
Excellent.
New book, not the old book, because I'm waiting to hire an editor to do that. But yeah, I've been working on another story, and I just want to say, for the record, Bellini's not a fan of the structure. I'm going to be honest. So far, it's not doing a whole lot for me. Now, Andrew, I don't know if do you know what a Bellini is?
I don't think so.
It's a form of Slavic, I think specifically Russian-style epic poetry.
Okay. What's the word again?
It's like B-I-L-N-Y. Here, let me. B-Y-L-I-N-Y. I have no idea if Bellini is how it's properly pronounced.
Is it B-Y-L-I-N-Y?
Yes.
Interesting.
A traditional East Slavic poem. I think Poland is West Slavic. I wouldn't know though.
I think so. I mean, it's pretty much the most Western.
Yeah. Slavia. Right, because you may remember in my book there is I think one poetry section.
Oh shoot. I don't remember exactly. It seems to ring a bell, but I don't
It's
remember.
in I think it's in your least favorite chapter, or the chapter after your least favorite chapter, which is coincidentally your least favorite chapter is my favorite chapter. but it's the where Klein does that big oath poem, which was based off of a Beowulf's structure. I think I stole the meter and the but anyway, I wanted to include. I had a great idea because this is a sort of a vaguely medieval story, right? And there's tons of stuff going on. There's tons of backstory. And I thought an interesting idea might be. I'm still testing it out, but an interesting idea might be to communicate backstory through these epic poems that people will hear throughout the course of the story, kind of like Tolkien does in The Hobbit. And I don't know if he has any songs in the Lord of the Rings, but because that's how information would be conveyed in those times.
So I'm on favor of things like that. Are you looking to get? You're not looking to get it published or anything, are you?
Not right now. Well, so I'm not planning to do anything with this book because I still have to do shit with the last one.
Right.
But
because
so,
like that might be something that if you were to look into publishing, that they might be like, yeah, that's not exactly something that we want. Because apparently like there's like all these things that publishers want and stuff, but screw them. Screw them.
as I've made painfully clear,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
have no
yeah.
intention of doing things effectively, only amusingly.
Okay.
But yeah, so my idea
That's
was
fine. That's probably better, to be honest.
right. So there's we would there were kind of a couple themes I wanted to work with it. So like we would have these epic poems that tell sort of pieces of backstory, but they're never really quite accurate to real life, much like real epic poems. They're exaggerated and things are twisted. And so as we go through the story, we have this background of the epic poems, and then we find things aren't lining up quite correctly in all the same places. Some stuff the same, but some's not, and there's sort of an exploration there. And I thought it was an interesting concept. Also, I wrote a poem, song, because all medieval poems are also songs. This is why beat, meter, right? These things sort of transition over. And I wrote a great song called "The Beast of Calico," which is it's basically a giant reference to Monty Python, where it's this epic poem about this prince who has to go face this beast of Calico, but the beast is actually just a rabbit. And the ending is it's too cute for him to kill, so he brings it home and makes it king. And the song ends on we all King Floppy Ear was not the worst king we've had, which I thought was a nice humorous one I could put in somewhere. But it of course follows a rhyme structure, and I don't think I put a meter structure in it, but it follows a rhyme. Bellingis the first problem with Bellingis was I could find very little information on any like big sources. Wikipedia doesn't tell you anything about meter or structure. Britannica didn't. Aside from on a completely separate document that had nothing to do with Bellingis, it mentions that Bellingis don't have meters or rhyme schemes. And so I ended up tracking down a forum where someone explained it, and it was a real. I'm not a fan because there's no meter, there's no rhyme scheme, so the only rule you follow is word stress, and there's like 2 to 3 word stresses, and they come on the third word and the third to last word. And word stresses are like my least favorite parts of fucking poetry. But I've been trying it and I've been getting better. And so,
yes.
Yeah, I'm working on them now. I bought a new journal. I'm trying out the dotted ones as opposed to the line ones. And so I'm writing one about Emond Rodsluga, the Kinslayer, who is a prominent character, because he's the Margrave of the Knife, which is a area in the book. I'm not sure how much I want to put in of places, because that was one of the things I did in the book you read. I made it very vague, so it could feel vaguely European, but nothing super concrete, and that was a deliberate choice. So I don't know exactly what I'm going to do with this one. But we're not here to talk about our fictional works, Andrew. Do you know what we're here to talk about?
Well, we're here to talk about my hit show Arcane. I wrote and animated and produced
And directed.
and directed.
And I wrote and co-wrote it. Didn't you know? Is this the Obama meme of putting the medal on oneself? But yeah, that's what we're here to watch. We are on episode 6. Hold on, did I forget to tweet all these stuff out? I did. Let me. There we go. If you want to retweet that for me, that'd be great.
I'll retweet that for you.
Kill those. But yeah. So actually, this is a bit of a joke because I can't fucking write anything in this book because I told you like I was on chapter 3 last time we talked, and there's been no progress made really since then. Because in order to do anything, I have to do like hours of research on different things in order for the story to make sense.
The writer's life.
I just thought of this line. Like, what? I'm writing a fiction story, Andrew. What do you think I'm doing? Just making it all up? But yeah, this was one of the reasons I was super happy because if you remember, I was in Toronto a couple times this week.
And couple times, okay, nice.
Yeah, I went to the Royal Interior Museum, and they had like sword sections there that were super useful for getting like and this is why museums are great, right? Because you can see a picture of like a sword type online, but you don't really get a sense of scale until you go see it in person. So there's like a particular sword I wanted to look at that happened to be there. And it's nice because I now finally understand how big that sword is practically, and it's a lot smaller than I was thinking it was. So I'll have to make some adjustments in the story. But yes,
it's smaller than you thought, or bigger than you thought?
It's smaller than I thought, which makes sense. It's like a Bronze Age sword, so it's not like they had tons of. It was the Kopesh specifically I was looking at, because there's a character who in the book who will probably get revealed as soon as you meet him, but he's called the Dragon Son, and so I wanted him to have these like curved swords. So I was looking at curved sword blades, and the Kopesh looked kind of cool, but it's a Bronze Age sword. So I'm like, okay, why? What happened to the sword? Why didn't it continue? Can we make this work? And the Kopesh, of course, is a Bronze Age sword, so they can't make swords very long at that point. They just don't have the tech. And so that's also why it's curved. I don't know why it's okay, but yeah, and that's why it's curved so weirdly. It's to add structural capabilities to it and whatnot. But yeah, there's like magical swords and stuff, so I can probably make some adjustments and make some stuff work. But once again, Andrew, we're not here to talk about my book. We're here to talk about the hit show that you wrote, co-wrote, directed, co-directed, and did all the voice acting for, and all the animation.
Yes. Remarkably talented.
Yes. The artist of our generation. Arcane, episode 6, which if you remember, in the 3-act structure, this is the end of Act 2. And also where I said, at the beginning of the episode, is the last point in time anyone in this series has a chance at a good ending this season. And I stand by that. Because episode 6, titled when these walls come tumbling down is when everything that's been built up to this point comes tumbling down and crashing around them. So this is my hypothesis going in. Throughout this trial, the defense will seek to prove that there was no chance at redemption because of the actions taken by all of the characters.
This episode?
Yeah. Going in, do you disagree with my assertion?
I would argue that a lot of the characters had positive conclusions.
Okay. Aside from well, okay, if we're talking about people with positive conclusions, I assume we're talking about Echo and Heimerdinger.
Yeah.
I can't think of anyone else I would really say had a positive conclusion.
I mean, I would say, well, do you mean alive, or do you mean character arc concluded successfully?
Well, Hamlet had a character conclusion arc. I wouldn't call his ending good though. Same with Macbeth. I'm talking about an ending where you'd say they live happily ever after. Is what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
Which
fair. Then I agree.
Which even then, so Echo and Heimerdinger are kind of the best, but even them, the actions in this episode, I think, sort of, it's the actions in this episode that get him kicked off the council. Or does he get kicked off the council in this one or the next one? I think this one. I can't remember. Either he gets kicked off this episode, or all the things that will eventually lead to him getting kicked off, because this is the episode where Jace turns to the more violent side, and that will inevitably lead to him being kicked off the council. And then for Echo, I mean, he loses his chance at peace, so I'm not sure he had a real happy ending. So they don't really have endings, so to speak. But yeah, we can talk about those scenes when they come up. Are you ready on your end, Andrew?
Yeah.
All right, let's let me bring up this. There we go. Is that still working? Looks like it. All right. Let's begin. We're going to pause it right at the beginning. That's what we do.
I think this is actually my favorite episode.
Is it really?
It might be this one. It might be. I think because this is when a lot of Victor stuff happens, right?
Yes, and this is.
Yes.
I'm gonna have some criticisms for some of the Victor stuff.
And
later some of Mel's stuff.
Okay.
I'm not.
Okay.
I understand why they did it. I'm not a big fan of where they've put scenes.
Okay.
And we can talk about it. First thing I want to point out. What color is this water, Andrew?
It is all the colors.
It's green, Andrew.
It's green. It's got the Zon colors in it.
It's almost like the idea of colors being important in the show has been a reoccurring theme throughout her analysis. Right? And it works really well here because there is water. It's not unusual for water to be green, right? Typically that means it has a ton of algae and whatnot in it. But even the green looks a little dirty in it. I gotta fix mine. But also, the underneath it looks really dirty and grimy and whatnot. But over top, it looks nice. Right? This water here, this water doesn't look that yucky.
Yeah.
Looks downright pleasant. Almost like on top, it's nice. But if you look underneath the surface, almost It's almost like a style, an animation uses visual styles to communicate information metaphorically.
So then let me ask you this: what is it communicating?
Well, I'd argue this is a small metaphor for Piltover on itself. Right underneath.
Piltover is like the surface water, and then Zon is the underneath water seen from within, sort of.
Yeah, and also specifically because Piltover is like the buildings up here. They're looking down, right? We can see the sky, so this is clearly above ground. So remember, this is what we talked about.
Is this like the threshold between Piltover and Zon, then?
That's what it seemed like to me, because this is the drains here. So I think this is the draining system going down into Zon. Because this is also where the Doctor lives. But also, remember when we talked about in episode 1 with the smoke? Because Piltover can't... I'm sorry, what was that?
That's interesting because the Doctor and Victor are both like threshold characters because they're both people who switch their city, right? Like he mentioned, like I cut ties with Heimerdinger. Victor is someone who left Zon to go to Piltover. It's not that big of a deal, but it's an interesting detail that they're both near the threshold, like physically near the threshold. Maybe that.
In some ways, they are both of Piltover and of Zon.
Yes.
Which you're right is very interesting and a good, having them literally on the border between, on that blurry line, sort of reinforces that notion. Because not only is Victor playing here, the Piltover girl, whose name now escapes me, his love interest, Sky is also playing here. So this is sort of a mixing place. So it is a real blurred line, which also goes to the right. The people of Zon, the people of the Undercity may not be your most preferred constituents, but they are our people.
Yes.
Right. But
that's the robot guy, right? In response to the robot guy. Who says that?
It's the nail lady, the golden nail lady, with the claws.
Yeah. Yep.
But yeah, the other thing I wanted to point out, because we talked about this in episode 1, if you remember, the first scene where they come across the bridge, the people of the high tower can't see Zon because of all the smoke. And likewise, from up here, all the underground, all the city below them looks nice, but there's really this horribleness that is festering within, that the Piltover side is blind to. And that was the other metaphor I wanted to point out. Right, do we want to add anything more, or can we?
You can go ahead.
Also, it's ruins as well, and you have the overgrowth. Right, this is an area that is not being maintained, unlike Piltover, which is being maintained and very clean and prosperous. The water is animated nicely. And there they are.
I love this. I just love Victor so much.
Well, then why don't you marry him?
I'm not a faggot.
Oh, you can't say that this early in the stream, Andrew.
Oh no!
We'll get a fucking guideline strike. You can't say. Listen, there's what's it? Nick put the guidelines out for this. I think you have to wait 2 hours into the stream before the guideline stuff stops checking.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that an actual guideline?
Yeah. You can actually get like.
Shoot.
I can't remember what it does. But the automated system only looks after a certain portion of time. So you have to wait a bit before we can start dropping words like that.
I legitimately didn't even know.
We stopped dropping the gamer words. We're only half an hour in, and we weren't even live for some of that. Right, but no, this is because this was the point. Because Ricada was talking about. I think it's 2 hours. I can't remember if it's like 2 hours or shorter than. I'll double check for you, Andrew. I'll find out when you can use the gamer words.
Because I was gonna say but they say it on EFAP. It's fun, but I'm like, wait a second, EFAP is like the longest stream out there. So
yeah, I can't remember how long you have to wait because the AI, they don't have enough like power to have it check all live streams all the time.
Sure.
But yeah, and so to prove his point, he just shouted a bunch of like slurs. And he's like, "See, nothing will happen," and nothing did. But yeah, you gotta wait a bit more before you can start doing that. That's just one. They probably won't catch it.
And I didn't even know that would be one that they would be looking for.
Yeah,
I guess that makes sense.
Right, that one. All the racial ones.
Racial ones. Oh man.
I don't care if you use them. You just gotta wait a bit longer so nothing happens to the channel. Right. Now you're talking about loving the scene. Was there something you want to talk about for this scene up to this point before I make the comments on what I'm seeing?
Man, it's just like his enthusiasm that you see so much later on, like still being here. Like later on, you know, it's about survival. And as much as he is still sick now, it's a lot less developed. Although he still has it's clearly not about that now. He just wants to build cool, exciting things. Well, I don't know, break new ground, explore, just like do stuff that a kid would do with his like scientific brain. You know, like he's not like maybe like Sky or whatever would invite him to go play up with the other kids and stuff. But he like even if he did, like he's not. He's I think more or less satisfied with where he is doing this. Like it's a simple but powerful desire. It's the Sigma male grind set now.
Reject women, embrace science. This is literally the Rick quotes. Rise above.
No, but I don't know. It's just like it's just nice. Like he's got this dream. He's got the I don't know, like the innocence still, and you kind of like see where he goes and what he keeps with him, and even like you get like the fact that he was able to get from here all the way up to like the assistant position, knowing that that's not what he wants. Like whatever he's doing now is a microcosm of what he actually wants, which is building cool things that will that really matter, I guess.
Yeah, I like this as well on a metaphorical level quite a lot. Because obviously, right, let's move back a bit. I'm gonna mute it so I can talk about it while we play. But didn't go far back enough. Right? Because this whole scene in some ways is I mean it's a little representation, but it's also a metaphor about how his disability has been affecting him. Right? We have him on the bottom and her on the top. Sky, who's the current love interest. And obviously he can't get up there on account of his disability. Because there's this giant rock he has to climb. But likewise, right, in current times, he also can't reach Sky at this point. Because he can't be with her or do anything with her. Because he has to focus on the tech. Because if he doesn't, he'll die as a result of his disabilities. So this is sort of a literal representation of the sort of metaphorical truth that is happening at this point in the story.
Interesting.
And we have him chasing after this technical development, right? Like he's chasing after the hex tech stuff. But he can't quite catch it. Much like he's having difficulty sort of catching that breakthrough he needs with the hex tech. And he fails to be able to get it. And it's not until in the next few scenes the doctor comes and helps him that he's able to catch this tech he's developing, which also foreshadows how Victor's what's going to happen with Victor later in the season. Anything you wanted to add to that, or?
I think that's a good observation. I didn't quite notice actually.
As well, this scene will parallel when he does run later in the.
Yes, that I was thinking about that one, but I didn't want to mention it yet. Yeah, it's so good.
Just move the video around.
I'm a Sigma.
Single male grind set. First thing, good job with the cute salamander Animaro here. Got the big old eyes and the "I definitely don't want you to die" look.
Yep.
But also, this character dynamic is kind of interesting. It makes sense in the context of who these characters are. Because Victor has the line, "No one ever believed in me," and we now here have the Doctor, who is taking a direct and specific interest in Victor's work.
Hmm.
Right, and that's a pretty great line. Loneliness is often a byproduct of a gifted mind, which is great for two reasons. Because one, he's empathizing with Victor, but he's also subtly communicating that the stuff he's doing is valuable and is smart, and he does have just meeting him now has a degree of belief in him, in Victor, that no one else seems to have at this point.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I don't know what to make of that. Are we like is that yeah, Victor doesn't seem to acknowledge that, I guess, later on. I wonder why
Well,
that is. Like legitimately, like that like I never noticed that before. That's totally
I would say a
totally
couple of
interesting.
things. I would say one, he probably doesn't want to remember any of the interactions with this character because of what will happen later.
Mm.
So it may just he's blocking some of that out. That it could be that. Two, he could be talking about specifically how no one in Piltover believed in him because he talks about a poor cripple from the Undercity. But here's the interesting part. That wouldn't explain why he doesn't think Heimerdinger recognizes him, despite Heimerdinger making him the assistant dean to the academy, what would appear at this point to be the second most important position. When he says that,
I think he might have just been saying that to like sway Jace.
I would say it's probably two things. One, oops, I hit a button. I would say one, he's doing this in the context of people didn't believe me until I showed them what I can do,
Mm.
which would work for both of these scenes, right? Because the Doctor believes in him because he sees the thing he developed, and Heimerdinger, we don't know the backstory, but probably Victor does something great, and Heimerdinger sees the value in that. But also, two, it might point to one of the big reoccurring themes of this series is people's perceptions of themselves not mapping on to the reality of themselves, and that disconnect between those two people. Right? How Jinx thinks that she doesn't ever do anything of value at any point ever and can't do anything and no one likes her. Right? How Vi thinks everything that happens to Powder is her fault, and how she's like this cowardly person who ran away when Powder needed her most. Right? So we always have these characters who have like this. There was a I can't remember the proper technical concepts, but when I did my psychology, sociology, and anthropology class in high school, we talked about the three people. We talked about this idea of like the three people. There is you who people perceive, right? So there's the me that exists in your mind. There's the you that you perceive, so that would be the me that exists in my mind. And then there's you as you actually are. And no one really knows who that person is. So these sort of characters, who they actually are, they have different perceptions of themselves based off the things they've gone through that don't quite map onto reality. And then we, in turn, also have perceptions of these characters that do or do not, in some cases, map onto reality. Like, I thought there was a pretty decent chance that Savika was going to betray Silco first time I watched this through. That's an example of a perception of a character that didn't map onto who she actually was. And it makes sense, now going through it again, why she acted the way she did. But I think partially it's reinforcing that idea of the difference between the self as they actually are and the self as they perceive. Was there anything you wanted to add, agree or disagree, or should we keep going?
Yeah, let's go ahead. Yeah, because I don't. Yeah.
Oh, and I remember the other thing I wanted to say. Right. So, because you said, because before we got on this part, we were talking about how the doctor is showing all this interest in Victor's work. And this is sort of the first time, seemingly, this is happening for Victor. So how does Victor respond to this? Okay, tell me about your work.
Interesting.
And there's the big don't kill me eyes. And I like the dialogue here because they're setting up for what's going to happen in very. It's not super subtle, but it's subtle enough that less perceptive viewers may not catch it first time round. Right? He refers to Rio as a rare mutation he's cultivated. He never refers to her throughout this entire discourse. He always refers to Rio as an experiment as opposed to a pet.
Yes.
Which obviously is juxtaposed to Rio, who's obviously a very cute animal, who the audience is going to immediately consider a pet. Right, and this is important because when the falling out between Victor and the Doctor occurs, it's not like it comes out of nowhere. Like this makes sense. Everything he says here lines up perfectly with how he acts in the later half of the episode.
The Doctor?
Yeah. Like, we'll talk about it, the lines as he says them. I take flour. You get slime. Trade offer. Right, and that's a great place to put, because we have this moment, we have this cute, wholesome moment where they're like, oh, and he eats it, and that's when he hits you with, it's dying. Right, so as sort of like we get to sort of this climactic peak of this cuteness and this development of this relationship, it's immediately undercut by the prospective death of the creature. Which is great because all the audience thinks the same thing. Or I assume most audience members think when they see this, okay, we gotta save the cute cuddly Animaru. Which lines up perfectly with how Victor is going to respond to this news.
Because Victor is still somewhat well, not that he actually, yeah, no, this is consistent with what we know about him. Victor is obviously concerned with life and making sure that things are good for people, or for creatures, I guess.
Yeah. And note the words he used here. He never says, Rio must live. He never uses live either. He says the mutation, not Rio, mutation must survive.
Yep.
Which
It's a very telling thing.
A very specific way to phrase something.
Yep.
Right, which
word choice is very telling. It's very precise for the character.
Yeah, he's not saying we got to help. We need to cure the creature. He's not saying we got to make her life better. He's saying this experiment that I've cultivated must continue no matter the consequences. Which Victor does not realize what the doctor at this point is actually saying.
Yeah.
What he's hearing is we need to help Rio, which is not what the doctor's saying, and he probably doesn't actually care one way or another about whether or not Rio gets helped as a result of this.
The doctor?
Yeah.
Sure.
We haven't seen a whole lot from the show. From sort of the extended universe, he seems like a Mangala type character who doesn't super care. And there's a couple of tells that indicates that he doesn't wholly. I imagine you would probably say he'd prefer if Rio did well, but that's probably more for the sake of the mutation than the actual animal. And there we go. You want to assist me. Victor is now an assistant once again. Until he goes to Piltover when he becomes an assistant again. And so there's the great line.
Now he's an assistant for the first time, I guess.
Well, I mean, Chase is outshining him a fair bit. In some ways.
Yeah, but I mean, this is the first time though that he's an assistant.
Right, but this is why he has the line when he talks to Jace. You think I wanted to spend my whole life as an assistant? He's literally at that point spent almost all of his life as an assistant.
Yeah, true. Let's be loners together.
Which is a great oxymoron. Now we're back. Snap back to reality. Whoops, there goes gravity.
Oh, is this scene? I just love all the things with Victor, just everything. It's so good. Sorry, let's keep going.
Okay.
We'll talk about when he talks. Once he talks. I don't know. I feel like this whole thing just like speaks for itself. They're just like it's the perfect thing that they could say to each other, like based on like who they are and stuff. Like, you know, like and this whole scene too, just like looking over like the accomplishments and just like Victor just never being satisfied with what he's done and just recognizing the futility of the time that he has. Like, by definition, it will be limited. By definition, it will come to an end. Not just him, but his work eventually, right? In the memory of people, right? Maybe someone like Heimerdinger will remember for a long time, but eventually even that will fade. And even in the grand scheme of the people that come across Heimerdinger's path during his long life, surely someone more intelligent, more creative than Victor will, eventually surpass him in his memory, right? Like all of that concern, like wondering about, like, this is what my death is leading to, and then Heimerdinger just being very reassuring of like, like you don't, like, you absolutely can't sell yourself short. Like, you've done basically more than most will do in their longer lifetimes, and yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome what the exchange is here.
Yeah, it's reminds me a little bit. I don't know if you've ever listened to Hamilton. despite being propaganda of a number of traitors who betrayed the rightful king of Canada in the U.S. Hamilton has a very similar thematic through line in the work, and it's this concept of running out of time and how you're always running out of time because you're always running closer to death. And Victor symbolizes this superarch because he is the closest to death of all the characters, whereas Heimerdinger is the polar opposite because he'll live forever. Well,
yeah.
Until someone kills him. I think he's like an elf in that way.
Right. Yeah. He can. It looks like he can be killed just based on. Oh,
yeah.
He's a little doggy.
Right. But so they represent exact opposite ends of the spectrum. And so there's this, and this is sort of partially what the big fight between Jace and Heimerdinger is, right? Humans don't live for centuries. We can't wait for progress.
Yes.
You can't wait when you're always running out of time. When Heimerdinger has nothing but time. He can watch continental shifts. Right? But there's a line I quite like where, because Victor says, "Do you contemplate death?" And he says, "Only that of friends," which I think is a really nice line, because it's not, no, I don't contemplate death because it doesn't bother me. It's death affects me, but it's in a significantly different way.
Yes.
It's how the people around me die. And we get like hints of this when he talks about like Stanwyck Pididdly and whatnot.
It's true. He's always very like, and when he talks about Stanwyck, he's quite precise to emphasize his success, right? His good qualities. So there's obviously some like that's obviously important to him.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I like this because this is what we were talking about just a little bit earlier about people's perceptions of themselves versus themselves as they actually are. Victor objectively has done a ton for the city at this point.
Yes.
Right? Hex
Absolutely.
tech would not exist without him. And as a result, all the hex tech that exists now and all hex tech to come in future are direct results of his contributions to Piltover. But he can't see that. He can only see things that he's failed to do.
But not yet.
Right, which is the polar opposite of maybe not the polar opposite, but the opposite of Stanwyck Pididdly, who chooses to forsake all of his development and his tech and his research, and he forsakes all of it to help the next generation because he knows their accomplishments and the work he puts into building these people up will have a ripple effect that will be greater than any individual thing he could create. So in some ways, Victor is looking very, very short term. What am I doing now? Which makes sense because he lives in the short term because death is very, very close. Whereas Stanwyck is, at least as told by Heimerdinger, who are going to be the story because it's told by Heimerdinger is from sort of his perspective and his ideology, is saying, if you look at the long term, these ripple effects that Heimerdinger has the luxury of being able to see because of his long lifespan, that Victor and Jace and no one else will ever be able to see. Right? Victor's here just crushing butterflies and looking at how many butterflies are left. Whereas Heimerdinger's seeing the thousands of downstream consequences that happen from that one crushed butterfly. which I think is sort of the big representations and where the big divide in their sort of views comes from. Heimerdinger is playing a long game on such a scale that it's imperceptible to everyone else around him.
Yeah.
Which is ultimately what alienates everyone from him, because he can't. There is no way for him to show these sorts of ripple effects. He attempts to with Stanley, but it's such, the scope is so large, it's beyond perception for most people anyway. You want to add some thoughts on that ending line?
I feel like I do, but I don't know if I can quite put my finger on what it would be.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this line a little bit, and here's what I've got so far. What Heimerdinger is trying to say, I think, is yes, your life will be short and you will not have accomplished everything that you want to. But you are so talented and your contributions are so great that even with the short time you've spent, the contributions you have made will be as great or greater than the contributions of someone who would have lived the full 80 years or whatever. That's what I think he's trying to say. But the issue, I'm not sure that comes across to Victor, who may hear as an alternative, the people who are the best die sooner and are unable to fulfill all of their potential.
Mm.
And so Victor, of course, goes down the sort of route of finding ways to extend life so he can use that sort of greatness in order to increase the amount of things he is able to produce in his lifespan. That's sort of how I see the scene. Agreements, disagreements, anything you want to tack on to the end of that?
Yeah, that makes sense. I don't think it's quite. Yeah, I think you added more detail than what I had picked up.
Yeah, because I don't know if you got the same feeling, but I feel like the question or the statement sort of leaves the tension unresolved. Right? There's no sort of conclusion to this sort of central conflict or the central issue
It's not
within.
an answer for him. It's not a solution for him.
That's the words I was looking for. Thank you. Right, which is why, and we sort of have this the music sort of goes, right. It's not triumphant. The other words, right? It's sort of more sad and in its conclusionary way, because this is sort of Heimerdinger's chance, right? This is what I'm talking about. This is Heimerdinger's chance to sort of reach out to Victor and sort of find some way to comfort him and prevent him from going down the path he's going down. But there is no good answer for Victor that Heimerdinger can provide. And so his only path from this point is to follow where these strange hex tech stuff leads, which ultimately leads to the conclusions it does later in the show, which we'll talk about when we get there. And we'll skip intro. So what did you think was happening in the scene when you first saw it?
Sorry, go back.
Oh, sure.
It's the one cut that you wanted me to see.
First off, I want to say I really like the animation, especially for that egg right there.
Yes. Yeah. Honestly, yes. Yeah. Honestly, I didn't have a thought because it was just quick enough to pick up. I saw the egg and I'm like, that's really cool. That's paint, red ochre and whatever. Like, it's a great detail.
Yeah, I thought they were
It's
like
called
making
tempura,
shimmer
I
or
think.
something when I first saw it.
Oh. Hmm.
It's a very nice egg shot.
Yeah, and I appreciated too that this is like a pretty cool kind of I don't know, like fleshing out of Mel, like just like kind of like having like a lot of characters in Arcane have like, passions, right? Like obviously Victor and Jace are the forefront of that. Silco's passion is his city, and Mel, from what we've seen, her passion is political, right? Governance, power, control. However, doing this, just the simple, you know, you know, artistic pursuit, like you wouldn't put her as someone who'd have time for that, and it's really interesting because the way she's doing it is a very she obviously it's like kind of emphasizing her being kind of angry that he left, right? Like she's doing the sharp movements of the little scooper thing, whatever that's called, that she's painting with, and it's like a sort of like escapism, which is very interesting. It adds something to Mel that she's maybe not so stuck in this political world, that maybe she, maybe there's something like she clearly like wants to take a break from it. I think it's just an interesting addition. Very effective.
Yeah, I'll talk a bit more because when we see the painting, let's get the dialogue in. Can keep track of that.
Yes, for sure.
I really like the sorry for disappearing last
Yeah.
week, and it like runs like a sharp metal object across, and it's splaying red everywhere. Right? They're doing a lot with the sound and visuals. Right, and we have what he calls, which I think is a nice line, because this has been the big issue with him and Victor. How he's always like Victor was like, dude, we're trying to make stuff here. And he's like, I'm busy with this council stuff and all this different stuff. I gotta go. Duty calls, which is probably the thing he's feeling the most shitty about right now, because he's been off doing all this stuff, all this stuff he was duty bound to do, and it's resulted in his dear friend dying and him not even noticing. And it also reinforces this notion of that's what's happening, because Mel is noticing it. It's also a bit of a shift in the character as well, because before this she was very sort of, this is all business, and so we get a sense that she actually does care about Jace and their relationship.
Yeah.
And this is also because what I like about this scene and the next lines in particular is typically in the show they go through all this, like for like a bit they'll have like some misunderstanding. It'll take them the entire show to sort of resolve it. The entire episode to resolve this misunderstanding that could have just been resolved with like someone talking to a different person and like, oh no, this is what happened, and resolve the whole thing. And this scene is kind of like that, but it's like a lot more realistic. Like he comes in and apologizes because that's the first thing you should do instead of making excuses. Mel makes an assumption about him that he's going to do some work stuff, and then Jace corrects that assumption, says, well, this is what happened and this is why. And then, all right, well, I'll show you the scene. Right, and then she's like slows down and like, okay, that it makes sense why you left then.
Yeah, it's appreciated that it's like just completely like reasonable. It's like he's at least he like says why, and like there's none of this nonsense argument of like they don't milk it,
Yeah, or like that stupid fucking argument at the end of the Invincible show. You haven't
Dude,
seen.
I don't know.
It's the dumbest
I still
fucking
gotta
shit.
watch it.
So
Really?
so Amber, Mark's girlfriend, is mad at him because she keeps leaving him. He keeps leaving her because she's invincible. Well, Mark is invincible, the superhero, and she ends up breaking up with him because a supervillain attacks and he disappears, and then Invincible has to come and save her. So she's pissed that Mark would abandon her, and that she has to get rescued by Invincible. And so at the end, in order to sort of rectify, to try and get her back, he comes to her and says, "The truth is, I am invincible. I didn't run when you were getting attacked. I went and switched into my outfit so that I could come save you with my powers." And Amber says, "I knew you were invincible the whole time."
What?
Yeah, I'm like, what the fuck? He's like, "Why the hell are you pissed at me then?" It's like, "Because you didn't tell me you were invincible. It's a secret identity, you dumb bitch. I can't tell anyone."
I now understand why people don't like that character.
Oh, she's fucking terrible. The original Amber. So in the comic, which I've read, she doesn't react like that. In the comic, she's super happy because she has a superhero boyfriend, and that's dope. And then as the story progresses, there's tension in the sort of relationship because Mark has to keep leaving and taking these abandoning her and taking these super dangerous jobs and just leaving her at her like college dorm and not talking to her for months on end as he flies off to Mars or whatever. And there's an even more interesting bit, I think, than this, where she says, "I'm mad because you keep disappearing for months on end, but I'm even more mad that I can't be mad at you for it because you're off saving people, and I'd be an asshole if I were mad at you for saving people's lives." Which is which is probably how someone who is dating a superhero would realistically feel, right? Like
Yeah, for sure.
you hear this with people who have relatives who are like cops, like a significant other who's a cop or works in some sort of dangerous profession, right? And that I think that's a much more interesting dynamic to explore than, well, you kept your secret identity secret.
Does seem like kind of the easiest possible one that you could have done.
Yeah, and which is because there's this guy I like called Unique Name Saurus who has a
Nice.
much better version of what could have happened. Where, because Mark is like super bad at keeping his identity secrets. And so he created a different argument that could have happened that would have been way more interesting. Where instead, she's actually related to like one of the superheroes who recently died. One of there's sort of JLA that gets massacred by one of the characters. And she's not pissed about him for any of that stuff. She's pissed because he's doing such a piss poor job at keeping his identity secret, and she's worried it's going to get him or her killed. And that makes sense. Like, you disappear, and then Invincible shows up at the same college that you're at, just happenstance, which would have been a much more interesting scene, I think. But but yeah, in here, like it makes sense why everyone's like, he shows up, and she's mad, obviously, because he left and didn't say why. He shows up and assumes she's mad, rightfully, because he left and she didn't say why. Right? So he says, "I'm sorry," but and Mel assumes that he's apologizing, but assumes that he left for work reasons, because that's what she would assume, because she doesn't know about Victor. Chase says, "Well, it wasn't duty. It's because my friend is dying." She's like, "Okay, that's a reasonable excuse as to why you would disappear in the middle of the night." And then I'm gonna go back a little bit before we continue, because I keep talking about framing, and right, Mel is a lot higher up here than Victor is, because he's coming to her in his moment of weakness, asking for forgiveness and asking for like emotional support and help. So it makes sense that he's the one who sits first and has the lower vantage point to Mel. And this is also one of the things I like about Arcane is sort of the interconnectivity, right? We once again have an example of the underprivileged of the underclass, but we also have here that it's because they keep referencing the air, right? The forces go down with these masks. Victor is crippled because of these gases in the fissures, which all works that both which work together to sort of build up this narrative and this sort of sense of this location, but also all these steps are just sort of small points on which we are going to build for that scene where Silco goes and talks to the Chem Barons in episode 7, I think, next episode, where he well, I don't want to spoil it too much, but all of these small points are everything. All these small points that we hear throughout the show start setting up for things to happen later, and really build those scenes and make those scenes make sense in the context of the world. Right in here, we're having because Mel makes the duty comments earlier, and this is him now talking about how he regrets focusing so much on the council instead of his friend in the tech that his friend wanted to work on. Which I think reinforces why he sits down immediately after that line, because the duty calls line sort of reminds him of him not being the greatest friend at this point in the world. And so this kind of just reinforces that I am a shitty person right now sort of attitude Jace has.
Yeah. That's one I wanted to point out too. I didn't realize you were so close. Like, I guess like I don't know, his girlfriend or I don't know, whatever, doesn't even know who his best friend is because he's so occupied with other things that he hasn't, like, that just enforces even more that he hasn't been paying attention to Victor.
Yeah. And that might be because these really big hit lines are accentuated with actions, right? She hits him with the duty calls, he goes down. She hits him with I didn't realize you're so close. He goes down even further. On the ground, and they just keep hitting him. Break it up. Break it up, Rep.
He's like, I'm never going to you for help again.
Aww.
It's like a way to make it all about you. Like, like, honestly.
No, but it makes sense for Mel's character because
He's trying to relate with him.
Right, but because her family is always foremost and present in the front of her mind, right?
Yes, true. We know this. Yep.
The richest person in Piltover, but the poorest Medarda. Right, and later when she talks to Jace in the Forge, she talks about her relation to her family versus Jace's relationship to Heimerdinger. Right, and this painting, I think, is supposed to be representative of her mother's place in Noxus, right? Because the stone coloring looks very similar to the temple or the castle thing we see at the beginning of next episode, right? The red is the color of the Medardas, And we know she paints things from her homeland because we have the scene where she wakes up, and we have the cut from the amulet to the painting of the amulet.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
And we'll talk about it when we get to that scene in not next episode, but the episode after. But yeah, so obviously everything, the Medarda are constantly on her mind. That's how she's relating to everything. And that's the line that sets up for episode 7 when her mom reveals the real reason why she was gotten rid of. But notice that she doesn't answer yes or no to this question. She's unsure as to why she was kicked out, which also prompts her to ask her mom in episode 7. And I think that is a bit of projection, my favorite word, on her part. Right? She wants to be with her family. She misses them. And so she's like, "Okay, Jace, you have to be with them because that's what I want." And it's not bad advice.
It's good projection, and
Yeah.
and if it is projection, I'm not sure I would call it that. Yes, in a way.
Well, I mean, because I would argue that not all projection is bad, right? You're taking your experiences and mapping them onto someone else. And that's, you can get delusional takes out of that. But generally, right, I like family. Jace seems to like family. I want to be with family. Jace wants to be with family, right? These are not unreasonable.
Yeah.
Right? And then all of this, right? And she's literally telling him this on the sort of metaphorical and through the painting literal backdrop of her family, her family familial struggles. And I like,
Beautiful painting of what seems to be a pretty terrible place.
I quite like this shot because it's one. Victor kind of looks like a wizard here. Right? He's got the big staff.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
Yeah. And two, he's surrounded by what looks a fair bit like spider webs. Right? He's sort of entangled and entrapped in this hex tech, and there doesn't seem to be a way out.
Isn't this what we saw earlier from oh gosh, Heimerdinger, like kind of his like explanation?
Oh, you mean like when it shows the reds surrounding the mage who's like lighting up the sky and stuff?
Yeah. Was that different?
I think in some ways it's similar, but it's different, right? Hextech isn't magic, despite it being very similar. But there's a lot of overlap, and we'll see this because Heimerdinger is going to show up and tell them to destroy the thing, and we'll get to see directly how it sort of compares when he looks into it and sees the sort of mage surrounded by sort of the reds and the yellows and whatnot. So we can talk a bit more about it when we get to that scene. Putting the pieces together. Why does it look different? What's going on? There's blood there. And then we cut to here. Any last thoughts you want to add on that scene before we cut to the main character of Arcane?
What do you mean? We just cut away from him?
Oh, so Victor's the main
But
character now. Okay.
I'm kidding. I don't know. It's just like, yeah, I just like thinking, Victor, don't give in, don't give in. Die well, suffer
Do
well,
it.
offer it up.
Do it.
Oh.
You have to do it. Just Sidious. Just over. Do it.
No, City's out of here.
Become one with the Hex Force. Do it.
Oh no. Oh no, you will die.
I like it because it's a bit of I like how the scene was composed. Right? They clearly conveyed him figuring everything out without dialogue, much like my favorite director. Like, because he sees the blood, he sees the thing, he touches it. Oh, I'm figuring it out. My neurons are activating. And we cut to here. Well, hello there. I'm just a cowboy wandering in. It's a great gag, but it's also a gag that sets up for episode 9 when Jinx
Just
sneaks in
realized
there.
something.
Oh, sorry. What did you want to say?
Just realized something.
What did you realize?
Well, okay, I realized this before, but this shot just kind of made it stick out. Her eyebrows are brown, but her hair is blue. That's weird. Carry on.
Okay. I don't know, Andrew. I don't know what you want me to say.
Nothing. That's all. Carry on.
Okay. Yeah. No. So. Yeah, because it's a funny gag. Like, he looks, no one's there, and then bam, Jinx is there and scares the bejesus out of him. But it sets up for episode 9 when she sneaks in after Vi and Savika fight.
Yeah, I think she's generally being somewhat set up as sneaky. Yeah, for sure. Even in 4 and the ship, I think 4 is the fire at the end. The top 5, right? It's 4. Yeah, it's 4. And even like just being in like the rafters whenever Silco's talking to someone, like they leave, like whether it's Savika or whatever, and then like he just like immediately starts talking to her, and she's just been there the whole time. Yeah, it's really cool.
What I'm saying specifically about the composition, though, is because if we just done episode 9 without the scene done in this way, we'd all probably be like, okay, hold on a second. Where did she come from? This doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But by having this comedic scene here and having like a precedent for her doing this,
Mm.
I think it becomes a bit easier to accept, right? Like, it opens and Theon looks and she's missing, and then because it's a funny gag, I think the audience is more likely to accept this. And once we've accepted this scene, this scene in episode 9 becomes a lot more easy to accept. If you
It's also very unsettling, just because like it is comedic, but it's also like, my goodness, what in the world is she gonna do? Because she could do anything right now. Like we don't know.
yeah, this is one of the great parts of the scene I like, right? Because obviously you have Jinx, this sort of Harley Quinn, this sort of silly character, this like, oh, I'm so crazy and quirky, but we've put her in a situation where someone like a real person has to actually interact with her, and it sort of reminds us, oh, she's actually crazy, and not like in a funny way, like in like she'll fucking kill you. It sort of adds. It's a great scene because it's all the comedic elements of her, but it's done in such a way that those comedic elements are scary, as they would be with like a real crazy person. So I really like the way they construct the scene.
You're doing great, Chuck.
I like. Do you notice she has her own cup?
Yeah. Well, it's the same cut that Ender had.
Yeah.
It powered through.
Yeah. And I like how, because I just said this, but like how it's like a normal person reacting. You can see how fucking terrified he is. He has like the shaky pouring the drink. Oh, I don't know, miss. I don't know nothing about nothing, miss. Someone's like, yes. And she's actually doing like a pretty decent job interrogating, right? Like, oh, we're just grabbing people up. Anyone? A couple of girls. Oh, did you? I wasn't told about these girls. I don't know nothing about nothing, miss.
You're doing great. I don't know why I love that line so much. It's just like it's so dreadfully terrifying. She's like being so silly, and like at any moment this guy could just be dead or like hung upside down or something.
Yeah, but I like it because there's the sort of silly, wacky, quirky, crazy girl, and there's also the terrifying aspect of this is a mentally deranged lunatic. But also there's like there's a decent level of capability behind it. Right? She's trying to figure out what's going on, so she starts like these small things and start building up weird inconsistencies. Right? No one's here. That's weird. Some people were supposed to get grabbed up. Oh, it's just grabbing anyone up? Well, okay, it's like 2 girls. Any girls? Why
It's the
wasn't I
great way
told?
of it's the great way of doing interrogation. Watched a whole bunch of those like I guess like true crime interrogation things a while ago.
The Jim can't swim stuff.
Yes, yeah, that sort of thing. I found those really interesting. Just the way that they
Right, they never come out and say, "I know you did this. Tell me why you murdered him at this time at this point."
Eventually, like sort of sometimes, but yeah, like usually they're very like well, you know, like I know you're trying here, but like you told me earlier that you had like you didn't have any knives on you, but now you're saying that there was a knife. So what's going on there? Like, you know, they're very subtle about it. It's great.
You're not in any trouble. We're just trying to get all the facts straight, you know?
Yeah.
You said you made the phone call, but this was while your hands were tied behind your back. Could you show me how you did that?
Yeah, that one girl.
Yeah, the Asian.
She actually does it in the interrogation too. She successfully does it.
Got lucky, but no, like, because she'd never come, right? Because it'd be in a lesser show. She'd say, "Tell me everything I want to know. I'm a scary lady. Oh, you're a scary lady. Here's everything I know." Right, but no, she does like little bits. She gets the story. She's like, okay, well, hold on. This part of the story is, could you clarify here? And all these little pieces, which is great because it never feels like he's telling her, like, here's the secret plan that we were told not to tell you. It feels like he's just trying to cover his ass on these slight things to make her believe that he doesn't know what's going on. Which, to be fair, he may not know what's going on, but yeah. So there's crazy, silly, quirky girl who's a crazy person who will stab a bitch. But she also has like she's capable. She has a very very specific set of skills. They involve interrogation and blowing up dads. So, when you first saw the scene, did you think it was going to blow up and kill him?
I think so. I'm pretty sure I did. I don't remember.
I wasn't sure. I think I was leaning towards because it happened so quickly, right? But yeah, this sort of adds to sort of the unpredictability, which is which when we watch these sorts of shows is sort of like this. Oh, you can't tell what she's going to do next, quirky crazy girl. Whereas having someone who's like legitimately unpredictable is sort of terrifying. We don't know how to react to any individual thing because we don't know how this person will act as a result. Oh, it's your favorite side character. You know,
Favorite side character, Vi?
now that you pointed out, her eyebrows aren't red either.
No. Also brown, aren't they?
Yeah. To get a close up. We had a.
They've been dyeing their hair since they were 4, and in prison.
Yeah, and their parents were. Honestly, it's more likely that they're dyeing their eyebrows. I think.
We
You
just
know what?
appear normal.
You know what? Maybe the hair colors are a result of the weird toxic chemicals in the air.
Could be.
I don't know. It doesn't affect the eyebrows. I don't know. Caitlyn's are correct. I don't know. I like how they've added all these dust particles everywhere. It's like a very minor thing, but it's a nice touch. Not the smartest play, but is a very Vi play. Who's that, Andrew? Who's that character?
It's Vi from the past and the future. Vi from her own past future.
Okay. Do we want to add anything about the getting down scene before we come to this banger?
Well, it's similar. Well, no, it's well. Actually, yes. She's bleeding out right now. I don't know. It's very sus. Well, yeah. I do like. I don't know. Do you think it's plot armor that she's like been stabbed by a massive claw? She's just like she's still kicking all this time. Do you think it's reasonable, given her physique and strength and stuff?
I mean, a stab wound isn't necessarily instantly fatal. Right, the big thing is if you get stabbed, you're supposed to keep pressure on it, and it seems like she's holding her side with her hand. Jumping down was kind of retarded, but much like Alex Jones, Vi is a little retarded. Yeah, I would have more of an issue if like she wasn't showing clear, like she's leaning, she's getting half carried by Caitlyn, and then when she jumps down, she really fucks it up. And so I think it's not as big of a deal. Also, she got stabbed in the abdomen, which is probably not one of the worst places to get stabbed. Right? If she got stabbed in the heart, I'd have an issue with it. But she's because if it's the abdomen or like the lower abdomen, like it's not like the stomach or anything. You could have a thing where maybe it punctures. Could puncture some internal organs, but if you're holding pressure on it, right, the big issue, especially if the knife is pulled out, is bleeding out if it hasn't hit any vital organs immediately. So it's not implausible, I don't think. Right, if she was jumping down and perfectly landed all the things and landed fine and said, "Yeah, girl power," I'd have an issue with this. As it is, I think it's fine. Especially since this is she continuously gets worse, and that's what causes Caitlyn to go and seek out a treatment, right? You are you googling stab wounds?
Yes.
Mayo Clinic?
No.
That's actually a great gag in Airplane. They call the Mayo Clinic.
It's fantastic. It's amazing.
Is there anything else we want to talk about for that scene, or are we talking about this banger now?
Yeah, let's get into this one.
Okay. Lost 2.
From the dead. Nice.
Hey, nights.
So, and that's the end of Savika.
Yeah, she
Comes back. She's just dead now. Revenge.
Right, but once again, right, we have Savika, the soldier woman, going headstrong, head forth, and Jinx is like, "No, we're not doing that."
No, we're just gonna cut to the chase here.
She said,
we're
"Trixie
gonna have a little bit
Hosses."
more fun with it. Yep.
And then this come to is nice because we got like the lights and the spinning, and slap back to reality.
Whoa, gravity. Casual smack.
You notice? I think the knife is already. Yeah. Before Savika, takes her nap, Jinx stabs the sword into her metal arm to make sure it doesn't work.
Ah, nice.
And she also paints it because that's what she does.
Yeah, wow. So cool. Such a great detail.
Yeah.
Completely missed that earlier on.
And what's great, like, it's a detail that they didn't need to include because her arm's already busted up. But Jinx doesn't know that her arm is busted up.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes sense why Jinx would do it, even though she doesn't need to.
So good.
And then, of course, I like the shot of Silco's desk. We got, like, the angry, funky mug and the owl, and all these sort of knickknacks that she's put together for him over the years.
The Kim Barons show up just like... Actually, he probably doesn't ever meet the Kim Barons in here normally. Well, maybe occasionally, since later he does show up.
Yeah, Finn
It's
and
like
the other lady.
They show up just like him casually like drinking his coffee with a little angry face.
Come into my house, drink my coffee, you son of a bitch.
So Silco's doing his like I don't know his daily like intimidation of like, oh, your son, shame if anything would happen to him, and he's just drinking from this little silly face mug. And then you remember who drew that face, and it's like, yeah, no, it's still scary.
It'd be a shame if an unfortunate explosion went to it. I hear explosions are taking all sorts of family members.
No.
There's a wide array of comics people have made of Jinx as a kid with Silco, and then they've had like voice actors dubbed over it.
Oh.
And so there's a bunch of hilarious ones where like there's one where this guy's talking about like this operation and she's just in a drawing book in the corner. Like, where's my money? Or he's like, we don't have your money. And Jinx is like, where's the money? Fuck it. Jinx, be more creative in your insults. Sorry, Dad. There's a lot of cute ones too of him like brushing her insanely long hair. But yeah.
Doesn't have time for haircuts.
Can't afford them. Sonics are too poor. Right. Let's look over the lines again real quick because I really like this dialogue. Right. Jinx has the we got off on the wrong arm, which isn't clever, but it's clear. Which I think makes a bit of sense for her because Jinx is going to be real pissed in this moment because from her perspective, right, her big fear is not being included in things because they don't view her as valuable, and from her perspective, she is now not being included in things for some reason she's unaware of. So she's bound to be super fucking angry. So she's not really coming up with witty retorts. She's just threatening people now. Right? I like the laugh and the no need, because Jinx, in sort of this situation, Jinx is sort of maintaining the power, and she's trying to extract information out of Savika. And Savika, because she's a smart lady, realizes immediately that she can use this to her advantage to fuck with Jinx. Right? I don't know if you catch that, but Vi is in the. Did you see Vi in the knife reflection?
Yes, yes.
Right. We have
Flash
Jinx.
of her.
Right, because we have Jinx first in the reflection. Then when she says your sister, Vi flashes.
Yeah, which is great, and her whole like visions. I don't know what you call them, but the whole thing.
And this is what I really like, is because I didn't say it as well as I could have earlier. Because we have Jinx here trying to extract information and trying to maintain the power in the situation. Savika realizes immediately, because her big thing, right? She hates Jinx and wants to get rid of her because she's a problem, if you remember. And she immediately realizes how she can use this to fuck with Jinx and get rid of her. And she lays out how she's doing that. But like, here's your sister here. She's looking for you. Boom, we have immediate tension. Yes, she replaced you. And now it's Savika who's calm, cool, and collected, and Jinx who's fucking all over the place.
This is slightly tangential, and I don't know if this is particularly noteworthy, but something that kind of occurred to me is like right now the two sisters are technically looking for each other, right? Like Jinx is trying to get to the bottom of what's going on behind my back, who are these girls and whatever. In some way suspicious, going through these very, like interrogatey, kind of like violent sort of methods. Well, I guess Vi is being. No, well, I mean, she's asking around, and then like, yeah,
Vi
just
literally
interesting.
beat
Like
the
they're
shit
both
out
kind
of
of,
Savika. She's definitely
yeah,
being violent.
yeah, true. But well, okay, so I guess not so much a juxtaposition as they're kind of looking for each other in a way, just kind of neat, and then things happen when they meet.
Right, and what I really
Exciting.
like about Savika's dialogue here is because it plays on all of Jinx's insecurities. And Savika knows that, and she designed this sort of speech specifically to do that. Right? She's replaced you. Right? You weren't good enough. You found someone who's better.
Mm.
Right? And this is Jinx's big fear. It's also reminiscent of how she sort of views her childhood, because Vi didn't want to take her out because she wasn't ready, and so she went out with other people.
Yikes.
Right? And this further reinforces that. Not only does Vi not want you, you're useless to Silco, and he won't want you. And everyone who does want you, you fucking kill anyway. You goddamn Jinx. This is everything that Jinx hates and is insecure about, and like her worst fears and visions of herself. And Savika's just laying it on there. And now in this scene, right, because Jinx has been maintaining the high ground, so to speak. She's been slightly above Savika, and now she's looking down. She's below Savika. Savika's looking down at her and smiling. We've had a sort of shift of power.
Yeah.
And then this is just reinforcing. Hey, you are a Jinx. You're going to ruin everything, just like you already have. Like when you fucking killed everyone you ever cared about. Okay, so before we get
Not
to
a
the end of the
10.
scene,
That's
here's a question I've heard. I have a pretty clear, definitive answer, in my opinion. But do you think uh, Jinx was actually crying there, or was she just pretend crying to fuck with Savika?
I think if she was actually crying, she'd be much more affected by it, as we've seen before when she gets affected by the topic of her family, stuff like that. Like seeing like a mistake, like the whole thing of like, oh, it was a mistake, and all that. Like, I don't know.
Um, so I'm going to disagree with you.
Okay.
For a couple of reasons.
Sure.
One,
Yeah, I wasn't sure what I thought.
yeah. So the big couple of pieces I'd say are one, Jinx at this point, I don't think she has ever displayed any sort of ability to to really control or hide her emotions. She's just not very good at it. Like I can't think of a single instance in which she's like pretended to be feel some way that she didn't, or that's
Mm,
not quite the word I'm looking for, but I she's never really been hyper deceptive in her emotions. On the other hand, the issue she keeps having is she's super expressive in the emotions she's actually feeling. The
true.
the only sorts of exceptions to this is where she goes a little crazy and then she immediately shuts down and sort of blocks that out, like she does in episode 4, when she goes crazy over the Vi lookalike, and Savika confronts her, and she just freezes and has the sort of stonewall expression. And that's what I think is sort of happening here. Is she has this sort of everything that she has, that she views about herself and that she hates about herself and all these insecurities, and they're getting laid out and confirmed to her. She has this moment of weakness and where she's remembering everything, and so she does sort of what she does in episode 4. She shuts it down. I think this is reinforced by the fact because immediately afterwards she's going to hurt Savika and humiliate her like she has been hurt by Savika's comments. Right, I think she's
Mm.
shifted from her sadness to anger and lashing out because of how upset she is by what Savika says. Uh, Disagree? Counter argument?
I'm not sure. I mean, I think it all makes sense. Like I said, I wasn't sure. I could see either way, and I think that that's perfectly consistent what you said.
All right, then let's. There's also a nice touch of her waving as it goes around.
She just has to.
Now, I love this scene here so much because it's for a number of reasons. Its dialogue, its timing is perfect because right now, in the middle of this arc, we're getting this very close close time between Victor is almost dead. Jinx and Vi are rushing towards each other. And now we get Marcus, the character none of us like. No one wants Marcus. Get off the fucking screen, Marcus. We want to see what happens with
Oh,
Vi, Jinx, or Jason Victor. And
I
so when the
like
scene
Marcus.
pops up, because it's at such like pivotal moments, we're super annoyed that he's, or a lot of viewers are super annoyed that he's here. And immediately, because everything up to because the Jinx and big lady name, give me big lady name, Savika.
Savorka. Oh yeah.
Thanks, Andrew. Real help. All of these have been like these. We've sort of having these faster paced scenes that are building and building, building, and then Marcus comes and that momentum just hits a dead stop. Right? And I promise this is leading to good points in a minute. And this is a great scene. This really humanizes Marcus, as well as providing a great meme picture. and slash template I like to use whenever cops are acting fucking retarded.
Oh.
But yeah, we have this moment where, like, we don't like you, Marcus. Get off the fucking screen. And Marcus has this moment where, like, I'm a piece of shit. Like, yes, Marcus, you are a piece of shit. Stop being such a piece of shit all the time. And we can see he's regretting his decisions and he's trying to figure out, right? But as soon as, because we're now in sort of unison with him, you're a piece of shit. We don't want you here. Get off the screen. Why are you even here right now? And then we have him open the door just when we're at the most sick of why this scene's here. And we realize, oh shit, that's why we're having this scene.
Hmm. It's interesting. You've highlighted the pacing very well in that, like what you've just described, which isn't something that I wouldn't know how to describe.
Yeah.
But I will say though, I find I know you're it's for the sake of the description, the metaphor, and you know what I mean. I do find I think we both find Marcus very compelling, right? Like.
But there's a difference between a compelling character and a likable character.
Yeah, but you want to see what he does, right? Like you do want to see what he ends up choosing, right?
Right, but I'm saying that the way I think it's constructed is because of I think. Would you rather find out what happens between Jinx and Vi, or find out Marcus's choice? I think if you ask most people watching the show, they care more about the Jinx and Vi stuff.
Yeah, for sure,
Same with the Chase.
That's just where I think. Just where I think it like the pacing is exactly what factors in, which is more or less what you had described. I think like it's not that people don't want to or don't care about Marcus and they want him want to see less of him or something like that. It's just that it's like
we're in the middle of this part of the story.
Yeah, like I'm so excited to see what Jinx does and what happens when they meet up. That it kind of like it kind of shakes your mindset and it's like, okay, hold on, what's going on here?
Yeah, but it's kind of like, for example, the first episode I think does this well with the cuts between Zahn and Piltover, and Jinx and Vi and Vander versus Jace and Victor. So I think at that point in the story, you're more invested in these children who are about to die. We got to find out what happens, and so there's cuts. I think they're using that sort of. We're really invested in these two storylines, and Marcus doesn't have. Marcus has a storyline, but it's not like a very deep or detailed storyline, if that makes sense. Right? He's dealing with an internal struggle, but it's not like there's. His story exists in conjunction with other people's stories, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
I mean, I think you're just describing a side character by definition.
Okay, but yeah, well, maybe that kind of works. We want to see what the main characters are doing because the main characters are very rapidly heading towards some sort of climax.
Yes.
And we immediately get stopped with this side character that's a very slow-paced scene. And we don't realize the sort of tension of the scene until he opens the door, which I think is sort of this great moment because it gives this sort of this feeling to audience members for like, okay, yeah, Marcus, you're a piece of shit. Let's fucking okay. Oh boy, okay, hold on. As he opens the door, like, oh, there's this oh shit moment, and you start, and immediately because he starts talking, you start putting the pieces. Okay, why is Silco here? Okay, you start grabbing all the pieces of the story. They start forming a puzzle in front of you. You realize what's happening as he starts giving these vague context clues. And you're like, oh shit, I've put this puzzle together and it does not look good for Marcus.
Oh.
And also, I really like the visual elements. Because if you look at the back on the bed, the goth lady is there the entire scene.
Yeah, I didn't notice her, and I don't think I noticed the guy until they zoomed in on his stupid face.
Yeah. No, I don't think anyone notices. I assume there's some people, but most people don't notice the girl in the first time, and it's
Yeah.
because of deliberate color scheming choices, right? The bed is blue and dark, and her clothes are all dark and like blue shaded white. So she
Yeah, the lighting's the same.
right. So there's a camo blending in, which adds a nice sort of horror a scary surprise for later in the scene when it cuts to her and like, oh shit, there's more people than we thought. What else don't we know about what's going on in the scene?
Yeah.
And because that sort of adds to this sort of this scene
And
starts.
Arcane does that a lot. Like you go back and you're like, oh wait a second, like we see like we see Jinx behind the statue for a second. Oh wait a second, we see Jinx in this other cut before she reveals herself. Or like, oh wait a second, we like all these little details and stuff, and it's great.
Yeah,
I love it.
yeah, and what I really like about it here, especially, because in some ways it's hiding in plain sight, especially because you're focused on. There's also how the scene is made works as well, because we come in and we're focused on Silco and the girl, right? This is where our eyes are, and then we see movement out of the corner of our eyes, so we go directly left under Goth Lady to what's his fucking name?
I don't know. Is that Deckard?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Which is also is a great introduction to post time skip Deckard, because you'll see what the Shimmer's done to him over all this time.
Hmm.
But it
I
adds a
didn't
nice
realize that
element
was Deckard.
because we, unironic to some degree, him calling himself a piece of shit in the mirror is the high point. It's like, oh, there's possibility for redemption here. He's sort of he's self he's looking inward, he's analyzing himself, and then he opens the door, and then the scene just gets worse and worse and worse at each step.
Hmm.
And that's why it's a nice reveal to have her hidden here and then reveal her later, because now there's 3 people who can kill you instead of just 2. It just keeps getting
Yeah.
worse and worse and worse and worse.
This is a no-win situation.
Yeah. And look at his fucking eyes. They're pointing in different directions. He's like real fucked up
Oh.
from all this shimmer. The chip nail polish is kind of a nice touch, right? He added it, but can't keep it up all the time because he's sort of mentally out of it, and Zahn might not have all the facilities necessary. I think Jinx is all cracked too.
Hmm.
Its teeth are all yellow.
Hmm.
That's a character from League, by the way. He's
Weird.
like fucked up. Right, and I just love how all like the vague framing of it, because they're having a very serious discussion, and then they're having this sort of framed around talking to this kid, so no one's ever saying what they're actually saying, but we the audience know what they're saying.
It must be such a fun thing for a writer to do, because as a writer you're always playing with subtext, right? Like every time you rewrite a line you're trying to figure out how to make it do more, and like this must be just like an absolute playground, because you're doing the subtext thing of what they'd actually be saying, and then you have the next layer on top of it of the subtext of trying to make it so the daughter doesn't know what he's saying. And whenever you do this in like I don't know a specific example, but movies where you have like thieves or something, like, or like spies going through their plan, like speaking in code basically, like not necessarily in like a silly kind of way, because there's probably a lot of like comedy type of stuff with that, but yeah, like this sort of thing, like the extra layer of having to keep information hidden. It's cool.
This is kind of what was fun about writing Klein's dialogue with can't remember what I renamed the cultist's name to. But like because you probably remember in the story that there's sort of a subtext of what they're talking about that the reader isn't in on until the very end of the book.
Hmm.
And that it is really fun because you get to put all these sorts of hints for that. But yeah, from my experience, it's sort of it's playing with language, which is something that people who specialize specifically in language love to do. But yeah, I love how they do it here. You want to take this out? So we should talk elsewhere. Let's not constantly put my daughter in danger.
Yeah.
And so it's like, can't you see we're playing? No, she's a part of this now.
Yep.
And then our old friend Vi. And him turning to talk to the girl about this is such a great touch, because Marcus may or may not remember, but she definitely doesn't know. And so he can frame this, tell her as a story, and convey to Marcus why he's so pissed at him. Right, and this is a great line because it tells the audience Vi and Vi's daddy left on a long trip, and Marcus assured me that she left with him. Which, of course, we know it's a metaphor for death, but she doesn't.
Yep. She also, like, it's interesting that he said she was about your age. She's not.
She's not. But this is also, so, one.
But I know he's well, yeah, go ahead.
So there's 2 points to this. One, obviously, he's veiling this as a threat, because she just sees it as going on a trip with Dad, and he's saying, yeah, you're going to be going on a trip with Dad if he keeps acting like this.
Yeah.
Right, but 2, it also plays to Arcane characters' memories are different than how things actually occurred. Right, Vi has the line, "My sister could do this when she was 8 or whatever it was," when obviously Powder had a ton of difficulty doing it. Right, so Silco's just going to remember young kids. She's not quite there, but she is a young kid. She has red hair, sort of similar, and so there's this difference between things as they happen and how we perceive to remember them happening.
I honestly, I don't think it is in this case, though. I think it's just very much just the intentional threat, and like just emphasizing the threat in like an absurd way. Because I think Silco would remember that it wasn't like an 8-year-old little girl that beat the crap out of his guys. He'd know that she was like significantly older.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's like, I think Vi is supposed to be like 14. 8, that's like a 6-year difference, which not as much to like a 40 or 50-year-old Silco. So I don't know. I think it's mostly A. It might be a little B where he's saying close enough, right?
Maybe, yeah. I don't know. Maybe not in this case, but for sure it happens a lot in this.
I don't know. But yeah, and once again, because I pointed this out earlier, the left eye is the right eye is expressive. The left eye isn't.
And the subtle color difference.
Oh yeah, the makeup.
Hmm.
Right, and this is also because we start realizing back from the dead. Okay, I see what's happening here, and this is why Silco hasn't been present for the entire episode up to this point. He was coming here to fuck with Marcus. He's just terrified. Right? He's doing the expressive sadness, but isn't that sad? Right?
Cool.
Separated from your father. And he looks at him directly, like, because he's saying, imagine being separated from your father, but he's really saying it to Marcus. Like, could you imagine if your daughter disappeared, went on a long trip without you? Real big mafioso energy emanating from Silco here.
Absolutely. Passionate.
And Marcus is trying to like, okay, this is dangerous. How do I fix this? I know. She's in a safe place. Because he doesn't know Caitlyn took her.
Yes, true.
Right? And Silco just hits him. Oh no. Oh no. Right?
Oh no.
right? And because he's in like a super dangerous situation. He's trying to find any way to get out of this. Right? He's in fucking survival mode. And he
Yep.
starts throwing ex-enforcers under the bus to save his own ass, as he's done with
Uh,
everyone else up to this point.
any information, anything to give him.
I'll give you whatever you want. Just don't hurt my daughter.
Yeah.
Then
Blaming.
what use are you? Which is a great line, because the sort of subtext of the scene is, you fucked up really badly, and it's really fucking me. And Marcus going, hold on, I can still be useful. Look at all this information I'm providing you. And Silco saying, it seems to me like you're kind of fucking useless. And that's a problem, because if you're useless, I have literally no use for you. Right? His value right now, he's threatening Marcus's value to Silco. And if Marcus isn't valuable to Silco, he gets replaced. I.e., him and his daughter go on a very long trip they never come back from.
Hmm.
And all three of them, all of them are staring at Marcus like, you're in danger, buddy. Goth girl and Stabby boy here. Notice he has a knife beside him the whole time.
Oh yeah, yeah. Did not see that.
Yeah, and the daughter's just completely oblivious.
I wonder, like, what you might think as like a little girl and these like spooky guys come in. I wonder if she's like ever seen Silco. Probably not, because she probably wouldn't. Yeah, no, for sure she hasn't, because Silco would never have come up
Yeah.
here before.
The impression I get is they showed up. They said they were friends of Dad's. She let him in, and they've
Yeah.
been playing, and so they've been developing this good rapport. So she has some degree of like child trust.
Yeah.
Which is why she acts like so shocked and horrified when he breaks her castle. When all the pieces come tumbling down.
Yeah.
Right, and this is part of what I talk about no happy ending possible. Because Silco's now come here, and by bringing Marcus in, there's no way for Caitlyn and Vi and them to get back, which sets up for episode 7. And right, the subtext here is, what use are you? I can fix this. I have value. Don't fucking kill me. And then the please is sort of a nice touch, right? Marcus has been super arrogant throughout the entire thing. And now, like, you sort of realized, oh, I'm really fucked here. And it's almost, he's begging for Silco not to do anything. And Silco, being the magnanimous leader that he is, right? And the obvious like undertext here, everyone makes mistakes, which I'm joking is magnanimous. And the important thing is we don't repeat it, which is his way of saying, you get one chance. If you fuck up again, or if you do something like this again, you're dead. And then we now have the reveal of Goth Lady, who we've, up to this point, most of the viewers haven't noticed.
Yeah, and that's where the question kicks in of like, oh no.
Yeah, and the great line is, my people are dealing with it. Right? And the sort of implicit visual element here is that Silco has people everywhere, and they're hidden, and you don't necessarily know who they are or see them, but he has eyes and ears and hands everywhere. He says, I'll deal with the underground, you make sure. And then that laugh is not nice.
Oh.
I don't like it. And the sort of the shock, like, oh, this person was here. He might not be a nice friend of Dad's.
Oh, I think it's just, well, maybe, yeah, really.
I think accidents happens is kind of a great line because one, way he does this is one, he demonstrates by fucking up her castle. He's demonstrating he doesn't care about her.
Mhm.
Right? I'll make her upset. I'll fucking kill her. I don't give a fuck. Right? That's one. Two, accidents happen. Right? It's clear because everyone makes mistakes. This is a mistake. This is an accident. He shouldn't have done this. He's saying that, me killing you and your daughter is kind of on par with you lying to me about Vi and not killing her. These things are moral equals.
Yeah, and there may be an accident waiting in store for you.
Yeah, that's the third one. It'd be a shame if an unfortunate accident were to befall our dear sheriff.
Mhm.
There's a great Michael and Webb sketch about how they need to be more clear in their threats because they waited around for a month waiting for an unfortunate accident to befall the main character before it was made clear they were supposed to cause the accident. That's why we agreed when we want someone
It's
murdered,
amazing.
i.e., deliberately killed to death.
we don't we don't call it an accident. It's amazing. It's funny.
And we return to Victor. And this scene also has what the last scene had with that sort of that leading the audience, right? We come. Victor has found a solution to life. We start getting our hopes up about how this could be the key to curing him. He's showing Jace they're working together. They're finding a path through. Victor seems excited. And then Jace says what's on our mind. This could be the key to curing you. And what happens?
DK.
It's like a mini roller coaster. They bring you up, potential. We have reached the climax. We can save people. This could save Victor. This could fix everything, and then back down again. It doesn't work.
Mhm.
And we just keep heading down.
Later, you see he's got like a whole back brace and everything too, so it's not just the leg. It's really it's his whole body just getting weaker and weaker, which you don't quite realize the extent of it.
Yeah, and the lines are good, right? We have this immediate crash of all of our hopes and dreams. And then Jace is saying, we'll work together, we'll figure it out. And then we have Victor coming like, listen, we got a clock on this. Adding that tension onto this somewhat depressive scene.
I want to point out a quick detail, but it was on Victor a second ago, but I can point out on Jace too. You see under Jace's neck, or like on Jace's neck, you can see like the I don't know what you call it, like the
Skin.
like the muscle or the skin or something. You can see how it kind of like folds and stuff. You can really see it on Victor. And on Victor, you can still see like the back of his hair, like the bottom of his hair, kind of like just going in like different directions because it's a little bit messy. That kind of thing, like that is so, in my opinion, hard to do, and like even hard to know that you're supposed to do. That's just awesome. Just like from like a 3D design perspective,
Yeah,
having design characters and stuff, like it's
I think that's probably an
amazing.
element of the 2D painting on top of the 3D model to some degree.
No, that's part of the 3D model.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, the neck maybe not, but the hair, I'm pretty sure.
Well, yeah, I assume the hair is, but what I'm saying is by having this sort of unique blend of 3D and 2D, it may be that they're able to better express these elements. whereas it might be
I think
harder,
so.
right? And a bunch of having this sort of mix as well. Part of why they were able to do it on such a small budget was because of the techniques that they employed and whatnot.
Hmm.
So it may be
Interesting.
that even if it could be done on other sort of mediums, having it designed in the way they did allowed them for more time to work on these details.
I watched a little bit of a documentary about Fortiche, like about their role in Arcane, and like some of the Arcane documentaries. It's really interesting what they do, the way that they do their 2D, 3D thing.
Right? Um, yeah, the last thing I want to say about this scene was following along with that sort of roller coaster analogy. We have the syncing, we have Victor adding on the time limits, and just when we get to sort of the lowest points, we have Jace bring it back up with, we'll bring on Heimerdinger, who's super smart and our mentor, and we'll do what we do best, working together to do something impossible, which adds like a bit of hope at the end of this otherwise downward curve. And we're back here. And then of course, it's a giant eye. Almost like this is a recurring motif in this show. Silco's always watching.
Hmm.
And it makes literal sense too, because we saw his guys ran by earlier. So it seems like they missed him. But he has eyes everywhere, and eventually it's going to be someone that sees them that's going to give them up to Silco.
Oof.
I'm a big fan of the sound design. It sounds, painful and gross
Yeah,
and
very much
animalistic.
sounds like the screams of the damned or something.
The visuals is pretty good as well. I like how it's very dark. Right, if we go back, right, that's the let's mute and play a little bit. I like how dark it is for a couple of reasons. One, uh, literally they're all forgotten about in the darkness. It like literally like it was thrown they were thrown in some closet and locked away. Right, so it's thematically works very well, but also on a visual level works very well, I think, because by having this sort of darkness, it leaves up a lot of what's happening to the imagination, and by the greatest fear is the fear of the unknown. When you allow someone to sort of imagine and project their own senses of horror and fear onto a thing, it can come out a lot better than just having a ton of disgusting looking designs. Right? Not knowing what exactly is behind this veil of darkness, I think presents a creepier and more scary sort of undercity than if it had been brightly lit and we just saw a bunch of gross looking dudes. Uh, you agree, disagree?
Yeah, for sure. It's yeah, it's very strong sound design, very silhouettes being, you could say, a little bit more ambiguous, like kind of like just like shadowy forms. The sound is quite clear, quite strikingly like painful.
And this is, you know what this scene is similar to? Pinocchio, the Disney movie. In
Oh,
Pinocchio, because they wanted to get like around censors, they couldn't show like the transformation scene, so they do it with shadows, and it's way scarier seeing like the shadow of someone who's violently transforming into this donkey than if they had just like done like an Animorphs style transformation, right? Do you remember Pinocchio?
vaguely.
Okay, I'll show you
Not every aspect of it.
the scene after we're done. But yeah, if you look up the transformation scene, having it as the shadow is is a lot like more horrific, which is probably one of the reasons why they kept it in the remake. Though the remake does not look good. like most Disney remakes.
I just saw I just came across the fact that a trailer exists for it. It was in an ad, and I just like skipped it as soon as I figured out what it was.
Yeah, I'm fucking done with Disney remakes.
Yeah.
They can't just keep making the same movie, Andrew. Except worse.
Well, we so can. This guy, I know this guy.
And notice when
Friendly
she looks
face.
around, we have these circles of light that will give you like one piece of what's happening around it, but everything around that circle is sort of fades into black, sort of
Hmm.
preserving that darkness as they go through it. And yeah, we
Nice.
know him. He's from episode 1 and 2, but not 3. Not in 3.
Fortunate.
I've heard and seen that some people sort of miss who this is on their time watching it. So to remind everyone who might be
Well,
watching
that's
this,
because they don't know anything.
well, Andrew hates you, and so you shouldn't subscribe to his channel. You should subscribe to mine instead, because I love all our viewers.
What
Speaking
the
of
dumb
which,
ones?
our primer review has been popping off a little bit.
Yeah.
It's got like 30 views,
Hey, very nice. Very nice.
which is good for me. Who's ever like fucking.
I mean, think about how much of a percentage increase that is, like than typically, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
We even got a comment from someone. So if
Yeah, it's a strange comment, wasn't it? It's like what?
well, so officially we have 3
I don't
comments
remember.
on the channel. We have one from you. We have one in some language I don't understand, and one who commented on the primer review. I think after you, who said I did a good job. So thanks, buddy. You're
Excellent.
watching this. Thanks. But yeah. So if Andrew just watched the next fucking movie we have lined up, we could release some.
First episode of Arcane is 51 views.
Well, yeah. I think after the primer, we had a bunch of people come and watch the first one.
Nice.
And CB is still being worked on, but that's a fucking nightmare. Oh, but yes. So this guy, who our viewers may or may not remember from the first and second episode, is did we ever find out his name?
Yeah, it's Huck.
Oh, okay. And he's the guy, if you remember, who gets the traders don't want to pay him all of his money that they owe him, and so Vander sits down next to him and says, "Pay him what you owe, and welcome to the Undercity," and all that.
Hmm.
He does not look as good as he did then. He looks real fucked up.
From a certain point of view.
Especially his wrist here. It looks like they fucking popped the bone out or some shit.
Yeah, it's really disgusting thing.
Drugs are
Like,
bad. Okay.
to cement that whole fact of like, why would you take something that does this to you? It's like, well, addiction, like it's real.
Note Andrew's going to take the controversial medical stance that addiction does in fact exist.
I know it's a dumb way of saying it, but I mean, like,
Yeah, you know. But
I don't know. It like,
yeah, I get what you're
I don't know.
saying.
It's appreciated. Like, yeah.
Yeah,
I don't
it's
know. I guess it's probably not like the time or the place in this season, or I don't know if in Arcane to like address like the like potentially like overcoming the addiction. I don't think that ever happens in Arcane.
yeah,
That would be interesting to see.
right. But yeah, it's a nice added touch on the commentary of how Silco's handling the underground.
Hmm.
Yeah, Vander wouldn't let anyone get left behind, whereas Silco clearly will.
Absolutely.
And the
Which is why
roaches are
Silk was
just
a
a
terrible
nice added
character.
touch. Very simple, just like black bodies and blue eyes, and just fucking run for it. As to the real disgust and grime of the underground. once again, we have this sort of the slow. We see her seeing visions, and we don't really get why. And then we notice on the background before. I can go back one so I can show you more clearly what I mean. But we see all well, it would be Powder at the time, but Jinx's drawings. Right? See, we got all Jinx's drawings here, and we start putting things together, slowly unraveling the mystery of what's happening right now.
I mean, like she has enough bloodlust for like this, but not enough bloodlust to not be able to jump down these like crazy towers and stuff. I don't know.
Well, she's not really jumping so much as she's falling. Right?
I don't know if she would have been able to stand up in the first place.
Well, I don't think she like lies there for a while Caitlyn comes down, and then Caitlyn picks her up. We can look
I
it
don't
up.
know, man. Have you ever tried to constrict your abs while you had a gaping wound in your stomach?
Have you?
Yes.
Right, she's lying.
Ironically, after surgery.
Well, I mean, maybe it's not perfect, but I don't think they're going like way out of the way to do something absolutely absurd. Right? Like, I'd have more problems if she was just walking it off, where she's clearly having difficulty moving around. She needs Caitlyn in order to do anything.
I don't know. I feel like you have to figure out a way to have the big threat payoff of Savika without her actually like getting the stab. Like I think you have to have her get shot right when she's about to stab.
That fucks up the rest of the story though, because right
Oh
there's
yeah, because
trading
then she would
consequence.
have just chased her.
Right? She gets stabbed because of how she interacts with them. Because of that, Caitlyn loses her gun.
Oh yeah,
Which
true.
I think is a fine trade. Yeah. I think they could have gone about it slightly differently, make the scene work a bit better. But in terms of, because we talked about this, I think last episode, that if you set up stakes, I'm not sure if we talked about it in this or in the primer review, but if you set up stakes, and they have to pay for those stakes, you have to extract some form of payment. So it would be super unsatisfying if she just walked off being stabbed, but by being hurt, and Caitlyn needing to go and sacrifice something, we've had sort of an equivalent exchange.
Sure, but I mean, like the that all makes fine sense. But I think that stab is really significant in terms of like the effects of that stab. Like I just think that I think it's like it's kind of hard for me to critique too hard because it's like it's fine. I think that this is one element in this great show where it's like it's just fine. Like it's not something that can be like, well, clearly there's a contradiction here and here. Like other than like the stab is a little bit. She should be more affected by it, in my opinion. But the whole construction is like, I guess it works, but it's like, I feel like they could have done something much better. Like it's not super helpful because I can't really figure out what they could have done. But I don't know. I think just this particular thing could have been stronger.
All right. Let's skip ahead to where we were. There you go. Right, and this is sort of a microcosm of the Piltovers on relations, right?
Hmm.
Vi, like the Undercity, is really hurting. But
Yeah,
they also
and
don't.
has been in prison for a while for being innocent.
but there's also like
innocent, but
because Chase
deserving
has
of
that
everything that
line,
happened to her.
"Our time to demonstrate solidarity has passed," and that's probably true. Even if Piltover came down and said, "Oh, we're going to try and fix everything now," I don't think the Zonites at this point would be very receptive.
Oh.
And this is
I think
sort of,
that's her saying, like, because she's not saying Powder is to blame, right? Like,
no, she's saying that
she said,
she's to
well,
blame,
yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
right? You're not the cause of the
For
problem.
leaving
I
her.
fucked up, and I fucked up her with my sister, and I'm to blame for what happened there.
Hmm.
Not all of them, just most of them. And that's kind of a nice use of dialogue. I shouldn't have left you. Obviously, is her talking to Powder,
Hmm.
but Caitlyn's going to interpret that because she can't see the hallucinations as Vice apologizing for leaving her at the brothel. Then we have this sort of callback to Vander. Got a good heart. Which
Isn't it convenient that she says the exact thing that Vander said? I'll be quiet. Okay, I don't actually think that by any means.
I mean, we can address it. I mean, it's a pretty common
Yeah, it's
phrase in there,
fine.
noticing. And this is a character quality that Vi has, so
Yeah,
probably both noticed it.
despite her rough uh, self-conveyance, and in fact very warranted. She is in fact very tough. She has demonstrated some ability to have a heart. Some. I don't.
I
I
noticed
think
it.
for the most part, she's been pretty um strong and kind of sure of herself, but whatever, it's fine.
I noticed this entire episode has been on a downward trajectory since the beginning. No, not since the beginning. Since after the Doctor meets Victor. Right? We have
Basically, the beginning then.
yeah. I think the Doctor in some ways is sort of another reflection of this roller coaster, this up and down, because we have this up that will come crashing down by the end of this episode. But this entire, so all these sorts of mini sections that are happening are sort of this rise and immediate fall, and it keeps each rise is like smaller than the last, so it goes up and down and goes up, but not quite up to where it was, and just keeps bouncing like a slinky down some stairs. Um, whereas Victor's sort of works as the overarching is sort of the inverse, where we have this high point that comes down throughout it and is going to rise as we come to the song section. And Victor's sort of arc mirrors that, where we have this high point with him and the Doctor, and then it will also come down. But yeah, thing I wanted to point out somewhat is the scenes have this up and down, or it goes up and then it comes down, whereas the overarching sort of plot of the episode starts up, goes down, comes up again, and then slices down a bit for the ending. Did any of that make sense, Andrew?
You know what? It actually, I think, did.
Okay. Then let's see how Heimerdinger is going to save Victor and save the day.
Nice.
And this is the sort of scene. It's an arm. Adaptive room matrix. It's an arm.
Yes. I guess so.
And I quite like how the Pog or Pogo or whatever is like terrified. And they're both excited in Heimerdinger's. This is the scene you were talking about earlier.
Oh, it is this. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're right. It
Wait,
does have
what was Victor looking at then?
Well, he was looking at just the Matrix, where he has like the blue and the spider webs around him. And then this scene, we have the mage he's remembering with all these sort of spider webs, but it's red, which I think is meant to be sort of the difference between the hex tech and the sort of the more pure magic.
Mm.
But as well, sort of it could also have to do with this magic was innately meant to be more self-destructive, whereas the blue one was, or it was intended. There might be an intentionality difference. I'm not sure. I think that will become more clear as the series progresses. But it will have to wait. This is the exact thing we didn't want to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Which I'll have to show you that clip sometimes too. What do we think about that line?
I don't know.
You don't know?
It baffled me. It stumped me for a while. I was thinking about it, and I think I was rewatching EFAP a couple weeks ago, and they mentioned that, and they were thinking about it, and I was like, I don't know. I because like so it's implying that he's already would imply that like this line would feel perfect to me if he had said it after Victor had done the procedure that we see him do later, right? Um, maybe he tried it, or maybe it's just the fact of um him putting his blood into the thing. Like maybe that's a change in him already.
I think actually let me take a look at it again, if you don't mind. I think here's what I think. I don't think he's talking about Victor physically. I think he's talking about how Victor is acting. If you look at how he interacted with Heimerdinger in the scene where they're showing off the lasers and the gloves, he is talking with Heimerdinger, he is engaging with Heimerdinger, he is looking at Heimerdinger. But if we look at how he's interacting, like just the visuals and how he's acting, in comparison to Jace as well, right? It's there. Boy, talks a lot. Right, we have him heavily focused on the hex tech. Doesn't seem super present. Jace is doing all of the talking, whereas in the first presentation, he's doing like half of the work. I think it's probably intended to be more about how he is interacting with the world. Right, he's
Is
developing
how he's more confident.
and more obsessed. Obsessed is probably more the word I'm looking for. Right, Victor. Because in the first one, Victor is saying these are our new things. Here's how it works. We're going to improve lives. This is all the good things it's going to do. Whereas that seems sort of to be missing from this presentation. Right, Jace has a line about how it will save Victor's life. But notably, it's not something that Victor brings up.
Ah, true. Interesting.
And this
Interesting.
sort of parallels his
Oh,
shift.
you know what? Yeah, because Victor's whole thing, like, he is concerned about his time, but he's concerned about his time for the purpose of doing more, making more.
Whereas,
So, yeah.
yeah, and this seems he's more interested in the thing in and of itself and developing it. He's sort of having that shift, much like how the Doctor has, at least in the back, seems to have that shift, and why he parts with Heimerdinger, which is later reflected in his conversations with the Doctor. Oh, let me. But that's what I think is going on. And he has that look where he's like staring at it a moment before he turns to Heimerdinger, and he has like this sort of slight move.
Oh, snap.
And notice Victor here isn't trying to convince him. He doesn't go after him like he did the first time around when Jace stops him. He doesn't have the instinct to try and convince him.
Mm-hmm. You're convinced Heimer?
Sorry, what was it you said?
Just try to convince Heimerdinger?
Yeah, because first time he wants to go after Heimerdinger and explain and try and get him on board, but Chase stops him. He doesn't go after him this time. He immediately starts thinking of the Doctor and going to him for help because he knows he has less ethical scruples.
Yeah. It's from the perspective of pragmatism, like, need a result at this point. It's not concerned with like what the issue with doing that might be, but just got to get done.
Right, and that ending looks Victor looks a little sad when Jace leaves once again to go deal with council stuff. But he's going to have to if he wants to save Victor. Now we come here. That's a nice touch. Hidden behind the door. Looks like no one's around. She closes it, gets scared at the same time we do. Pulls gun. Because she's a cop.
Makes sense. Hold on a second, Max. So it's getting a little bit late, and I think we're kind of at a point that's like a halfway point-ish. Would it be good to
I'm just looking at how long
next...
this scene lasts. Yeah, it looks like the next scene's about 2 minutes. Or this scene's about 2 minutes. And the halfway point's in the middle of this scene. So do you want to finish it, or do you want to close out for today?
Yeah, I'll probably close out for today for myself.
All right. Well, everyone, thanks for stopping by and watching. I've been Max Geng. I'm here with Andrew. If you liked Andrew, he's working on some games. And he's got a channel where he talks about he works on the games, which is Andrzej Gieralt. It's also linked Andrzej Gieralt Creative. and it will be linked in the description. You can buy his game, Air Obscure, on Steam right now.
Absolutely.
Your novella, Dragon Slayer, is also available on Amazon. Anything else you want to shill?
If you're interested in game dev, well, I guess the channel. I guess that yeah, you covered everything.
All right. If you like the show, we now have a primer review out that we were talking about a little bit earlier. Goes through
It's really good.
It's a
Really well edited.
time travel sci-fi, plenty of jokes, made on a $7,000 budget. Very good indie film. We talk about it a fair bit. You can watch that. And if you want to read any of my short stories, they're available for free on my website, maxgeng.com. As well, that includes all my socials, updates on the card game, updates on everything. And join my newsletter, and I will send you updates and maybe like free chapters of books and gift codes and shit.
Excellent. Sounds like a excellent thing to join in on.
Yeah, everything you need to know is in the description. Andrew's channel link, my website link. And this has been us reacting to episode 6 of Arcane, the first half. Until next time, fuck off.
I'll come back.